Nice to have you guys back here on for our last webinar of Cambridge Day 2020. My name is Renata Simões, your host, and I'd like to thank all of you from Peru, Recife, Pernambuco, Montevideo, Uruguay, Carcaragna, Argentina, Spain, Porto Alegre, Mato Grosso, Brazil. Also to thank Edivane Detoni and Luisa Nerigotti that sent me big ups at Instagram. And also I have a very special invitation to them and to you, to all of you who are with us at Cambridge Day 2020. If you want to participate of the official video of Cambridge Day 2020, record yourself at the landscape mode, watching the webinar sessions, and send it to contato@belabaderna.com. Our team will post it there here on the chat. And I also would like to thank our team, our great, amazing Cambridge University Press online team. I have two names here, Alexandre Koch and Daniela Meyer, but I know there are more people there supporting you guys on our chat, and without them, we wouldn't be here doing this amazing work. It was around the 60s that the International Brain Research Organization was founded. And since then, neuroscience gets more and more people interested in discovering how your brain works, how our brain works, how we can stimulate it, what we can do to improve the learning process. Our next speaker was born in Argentina and now he lives in Chile. He is the director of a neuroscience institute and also an English teacher. He's master in applied linguistics and a neuroeducator. He devotes most of his time to train teachers in brain-friendly approaches and school mentoring programs in Chile and Latin America. Please welcome Joaquin Triandafilide. Hola, hi.
Hi, Renata. How are you?
I'm good, and you, Joaquin? Thank you to have you here.
Okay, I'm excited and I'm happy. I'm happy to be in contact with you and with I guess with many teachers, many friends from Chile who I hope are connecting today.
And a lot of people from Chile, from Mexico, Rio de Janeiro, Azul, Argentina. Our chat is like, I always say, it's like on fire. Always people are
Wow.
responding, answering to your words as and like at the same time you were talking. We are more than glad to have you here at Cambridge Day 2020. And please be welcome to start your webinar. I'll be back in the end to do the Q&A session with you.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'd like to start now with our presentation then. And well, the topic for today, effective online teaching, and then the second line, brain-friendly strategies, will have to do more with what the internal processes of our brain or in our brain are, more than online teaching per se. Okay. Here in Chile, we have just been given the news that very soon we're coming back to normal situation, to the new reality, as we call it. And so what happens in the brain while we do teaching? Okay, a few things we want to go over today together. So I'll just start working. And the main contents we want to cover together has to do with 2 or 3 ideas. One of them is cognitive load. We're going to discuss together what is this thing about cognitive load, okay? And why are we talking about cognitive load first? Or in a way, as part of the presentation, because we want to we want teachers to become aware of what cognitive overload is, okay? And we'll check that together. And after we try and discover together what this phenomenon is all about, we'll get into 7 strategies to approach this potential problem in class, either synchronous, asynchronous, on-site or online. In all ways possible, this can become a problem. Okay, so first, I would like to, for those teachers in Chile who are working with me, for a while, I'd like to go back to a slide here. This is it. This slide is showing a little activity I'd like to do with all of you. So if you're not only listening, but if you can just give me your attention by looking at your screen right now, what I'm showing you is a number of letters and then a number of dots. So this is like a what they call an icebreaker or a brain teaser. And I'd like to do lines 1 and 2 with you today, okay? The letters in blue on top, we have to read them out loud. And then the dots below show you which hand you have to raise as you talk, okay? The white dot is signaling you have to raise your left hand. The black dot is showing that you have to raise your right hand. Ready, steady, go. A, B, E, both together. D, E, one more line. F, come on, you can do it. G, H, I, J. All right, we'll stop there. Okay, I wanted to show you this as an example of a nice brain teaser we can use with our own students. Okay, now a number of phenomena were taking place as I gave you the instructions, and then you had to discover what to do and finally start doing the activity. Okay, so we'll get back to that in a moment. I'd like to have some of your information now. I know many people are connecting from different countries. I'd like to know the main level or the level you teach these days mainly. So if you're to go in your cell phones, please, you'll have to go in your cell phones, okay, to the application menti.com, and I'll show you the code you have to choose. Okay, I'll show you the code. Okay, let me just, it's a number of screens I have to go to here. Okay, so what level do you mainly teach? Please access www.menti.com and then access the code 347711. If you have your cell phones there, I'd like to know, access your codes, the code 347711, okay? And I would like you to access that information. I'd like to have that information now with me. Great. So it's moving a little bit, okay? Hopefully, all right, we'll give you a couple of more seconds to do that. So we have teens, the majority of you teaching teens. We have some adults, preteens, early elementary, a few university, and a few preschool. Okay, teens is running ahead, which is natural. Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to know the main audience. Where can we locate the main audience today? Okay, so that's an interesting piece of information. All right, we have more people accessing it, but the majority of you in teens, then we have adults, and then following preteens and early elementary. All right, thank you very much. Okay, you may keep adding the information, and that will also come in. All right. Okay, that's great. Okay, now I want to go back to my main screen again. Go back to the presentation, okay? I hope it's showing there. Yes. All right. So thank you very much for doing that with me or for us today. And so, as I said at the beginning, um, about 100 days ago, we were very much into this idea of teaching on site, face to face, where a number of are taking place as we teach. We get a lot of feedback from the students' faces. We can see in their faces, in their eyes, in the energy we give, the energy they give, whether they are taking in information or not. But to some extent, today we feel that because the scenario has changed, okay, and we have a lot of on-site learning, online learning more than on-site, mainly online, and many students are having to face this synchronous teaching phenomenon. Then a new risk comes up, and that's the risk of cognitive overload. And I'm sure that as I mentioned this cognitive overload, you start thinking, oh, yes, Joaquin, I tend to be very tired by the end of the day. As I teach my lessons, I start early morning, then I have sometimes not that long, but I tend to get more tired. Okay, so what is all of this about? Why are we getting more tired? I want to show you today, I want to get into what we call the information processing phenomenon, the information processing system, and two main aspects in relation to information processing: working memory and long term memory, and where we should exactly put our main attention. Okay, so from there, now my second question, and we'll go again to Mentimeter. The question I want to ask you is, what are some of the problems when teaching online today? Let me just get to the Mentimeter presentation. I will need to choose another slide. Give me a minute. I need to choose another slide. Yes, from home. Wait a minute. You're going to the, it's okay. There. Now I'm going to moving to the right question, okay? I know you were answering, which is okay. So the question is, and now I need to share it again. I need to share screens, and then there you go. Please. Hopefully you can see my screen. Presentation mode. Okay, so the question is, what are some of the problems when teaching online? Okay, would you please access a second code, which is 557214. I've changed codes. 557214. Okay, as you access the code, you feel free to answer. If you want, feel free to answer. Maybe choose two or choose three of the typical problems you may be facing with your students. Once again, please access menti.com. Aha, and we have people already accessing 557214. And the typical problems when speaking of cognitive overload or cognitive load have to do with students getting easily distracted, students taking longer to finish a task, students getting tired or bored after a short time, or the teacher getting tired after a short time. Finally, the teacher being extremely tired by the end of the day. Let's see which of these, probably number one, probably number two, where do you find yourselves more? What is the scenario when thinking of the main problems teaching online? What about other problems, Joaquin? Well, I know there might be other problems, but just focus here, which has to do with what the mental processes where we go through. Okay. All right. So I can see about 450 people already voting, which is great. Okay. Um, so have a number of different problems. Okay. Apparently, the teacher being extremely tired by the end of the day seems to be taking a majority of the cases. Okay, and then students getting easily distracted as another important issue. Well, great. It's good to see that you are not alone. Not only you are going through this situation, okay, and we now want to do the following. What I want to do is to show you. Number one, let's discuss what cognitive load is all about. Okay. Um, for some reason, we are not able to show you this video, which is a simple example of what cognitive load is all about. Okay. Um, and a good and a simple way to explain what how cognitive load operates. Apparently, our working memory has a limit of items, okay, to take in a specific time. If we do it faster than acceptable for our brain, the same thing might happen as what we can see on the video. Okay, can you see on that picture? Sometimes you want to get yourself your favorite soda all in a sudden, and then you can't get enough because it goes over the glass. Okay, but if you do it slowly, you may take in more. Have you noticed that? Actually, that's the way we teach children to do it. So after the presentation, you can watch the video. The link will be included there, and it's a simple way to understand why we need to respect some natural of cognitive load. Okay, just an example. Cognitive load has to do with the total amount of effort we use in working memory. Okay, we'll get to working memory in a minute. Working memory is like a memory buffer, that part, that element of our memory that helps us take in information, new information, as we start approaching it, as we start learning it. We use working memory to manipulate information for the task at hand. Yes? Example of this? Well, you had to use your working memory the moment I introduced this activity. Remember at the beginning of our time together? Now, challenge for you. Would you be able to take 20 seconds now and do this first line of the activity we did before together? Ready, steady, go. Do it on your own. I'm not helping you. Come on. I hope you remembered part of it. Okay? If you didn't, probably Joaquin did not give the instructions in the most appropriate manner, or something was going on with your working memory that would not let you remember what the instructions were. It was basically introduced about, what, 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago? So, this is what working memory is all about. Okay? When we talk about any stimuli coming in our brains, like the instructions I gave you 20 minutes ago, this is basically information. Instructions to do an activity, new language, um, new information coming in the form of sounds, pictures, instructions. Now, whenever that information gets to us, it's through the senses. We'll mention basically the five physical senses we're all familiar with. But when that starts being processed by our brain, there are two main areas we need to consider. One is working memory, okay, where we start incorporating new material that gets encoded and then becomes part of our long-term memory. Now, the funny thing is, where do most teachers, in which of these three we tend to concentrate more after we've taught a lesson? Well, of course, we tend to focus more on long-term memory. Whenever you give them a test, give your students a test, you ask students questions a few days after you've taught a lesson, you tend to concentrate more on the long-term memory. Some characteristics of the long-term memory which are interesting to remember is anything students can remember after 24 hours has already to do with long-term memory. Long-term memory is much more stable and permanent than working memory. And apparently, physiologically speaking, long-term memory does not have limits. We can keep learning on and on for the rest of your lives. But now, have a look at working memory. Whatever happens within 40 minutes of your teaching time, whatever the students can remember within 40 minutes has to do with working memory. Now, two problems that we have there when teaching something for the first time. We just said that the door that opens the possibility of learning is called working memory. Two characteristics you need to consider. It's unstable and it is limited. Therefore, we have a problem if we do not carefully consider what we are teaching and how we are teaching it. The more stable a working memory becomes, the better construction of a long-term memory. Okay, and the more conservative we become in terms of the intake, the information we provide our students, a stronger long-term memory we help students construct. That is all the information they can remember 24 hours later. So I hope I made the point clear. Working memory is the key element. So a question we would be asking and trying to answer during this session is there anything you and I can do in online lessons to safeguard working memory? That's something we should consider. Okay, what can we do to take care and make working memory stronger when the students are actually trying to learn, concentrating in your lessons, or the teacher struggling to get through with certain explanations? Okay, so what we'll do first is just go over the concept. Working memory is the entrance to any learning. Okay, it is whatever capacity the brain has to take in new information within 40 minutes of time. Actually, what you're doing now is all working memory, and it is, we said, unstable and limited. So it is an issue. It is a problem when a number of things happening at the same time while you are teaching a class. Okay, are you doing a number of other things as you are listening to this conference? Well, these things may be interfering with your working memory because we said it's unstable and limited in its capacity. Now, whatever we do to make the process get from a 40-minute mental effort into a 24-hour mental effort, then it starts becoming long-term memory. Now, notice that black arrow there on the slide? This is a crucial moment. And this is what we call the process of learning. Whenever something we covered in a 40-minute class, in a 90-minute class, starts becoming long-term memory. That is what we call learning. So whatever we do with working memory will directly impact what the student can remember the following day after the class, okay, 3 days later, etc., etc. All right. Now, what we want to do next is to discuss. Well, originally I was thinking of 5 ways to avoid cognitive overload in our online, offline lessons, and now I've increased it to 7. So I need to change that on the slide. It's 7 ways to avoid cognitive overload in our lessons, okay, to make working memory stronger. And now here we go with this different ways to take care of the intake of this on the part of the student. Number one, go for new content or for a new modality. Content versus modality. Have you heard of that before? Either we change the way we're doing things as the new element, or we change the contents. What does that mean? Well, if you're using an application or a new teaching context, as it was mid-March when we started teaching online, say through Zoom or Meet or Microsoft Teams, the new environment was all in it a challenge for the students. So if you're using a new modality for the first time with your conversation group, with your school students, start with a familiar topic at the beginning. Do not push them that hard. That is what we mean by new content versus new modality. Okay? Once they become acquainted with the format, the application, the environment, then give them a language challenge. And this made me remember of when we started at the association where I work. We started teaching a year ago with this online modality, and I always remember the when we started sending the students, teachers, participants to the breakout rooms in Zoom. At the beginning, it was all very messy until we realized that we had to give them material and contents they were able to manage well because they were not familiar with the environment. After a while, then we saw the opportunity to start with, building new content, new learning, because they were already familiar with the environment. So content versus modality. Okay. Now, the neuroeducational principle behind this, interesting. Work from working memory into long-term memory. We to store new items, new learning by similarity, not by difference. So it's important to teach one challenge at a time, not two, not three, one challenge at a time, because of this neuroeducational principle. Tip number 2 for the day, manage the emotional atmosphere. And I know there must have been a number of different speakers, a number of different presentations during this Cambridge Day, telling you about the emotional atmosphere. Well, the emotional atmosphere has to do mainly with 2 aspects. Either the context of the teaching and learning or the content of the teaching and learning. I'm referring basically today to the context. Okay, what is the atmosphere you are creating within the context? Okay, that is very, very powerful, and it comes first context, then content. So emotions that students associate with a learning experience become part of the memory system. Your face, your voice, the words you choose to talk to them, everything helps them construct an image, an emotional touch, a hashtag, whatever word follows in relation to the emotions. So 4 questions I'm leaving for you today in relation to the context of teaching. Do you show them you care whether they succeed or not in your classes? Number 2, is their opinion respected or not in class? Number 3, do you make him or her feel dumb when they ask for help? How are you making them feel in relation to this? And number 4, are you the butt of sarcastic remarks? We teachers need to be careful about that. So number two, manage the emotional atmosphere properly. Okay. The neuroeducational principle behind this is very simple. If you remember or ever have heard of the this metaphor of the what we call the triune brain, in which we can consider three systems helping the brain process information. At the bottom of the brain, we can think of the instinctual or dinosaur brain, we call the instinctual system. In the middle, we have the limbic or emotional system. And then at the top, the cortex, the rational or thinking brain. Okay? Um, Whatever stimuli come in the brain will have to go through that emotional station, the emotional area. Not everything that gets to the emotional station will finally get to the rational thinking brain. Why is that? Because they need first to succeed on the emotional basis. All right, let's now get to tip number 3 for this day. Stop promoting multitasking. We are not multitaskers. The design of our brain is not for multitasking. Oh, Joaquin, I multitask a lot. Well, that's why I'm telling you today. We all multitask to some degree, some of the time, but technology keeps pushing the envelope. After March this year, we've evolved into a number of habits that might not be the healthiest for our brains. Okay, multitasking is counterproductive. It reduces cognitive performance and harms your brain and health. And you know what? It makes you get uh, older faster. So let's start thinking about our working habits and our teaching habits. Okay. Now, what to do with our students or for our students in relation to promoting multitasking? Adopt, why not, the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of this? The Pomodoro technique. Okay. The Pomodoro technique is basically assign a task you want your students to concentrate on, then give clear instructions, well thought instructions, and avoid the temptation of interrupting them. Have you ever seen yourself in that scene where you start interrupting once and again, clarifying on instructions given? Well, after you've given instructions, just monitor them silently. Okay? Part number 2, set a time for 25 minutes, then give the task 100% of your attention and the student's effort. And number 3, have them go airplane mode. Oh, airplane mode. So I cannot even send them a message or a WhatsApp or no, that's what we call airplane mode. Okay. And this is the Pomodoro technique. If you want to learn more about this, I've included a link here where you can see more details. We've used this, we've seen this with a lot of university students. That actually it was a university student who started using this and created this form, but I've adapted it into a teacher mode for you to teach your very young or young learners. Hope it makes sense to you. Okay, now the principle of the neuroeducational principle behind this is a very simple one. I think I've just explained it before. We have the different senses through which we receive stimuli, we receive information, but even though we get lots of bits of information per second, per minute, our brain processes one at a time. We are not natural multitaskers. And every time you start or try multitasking, you are losing part of your energy, and you are being less effective and less efficient. And what's more, and I'm giving you now the main reason why we tend to get more tired, we lose energy. And that's why we tend to get more tired more easily at a shorter time when teaching or learning on the screens. Tip number 4, choose your words and graphics carefully. I think this is probably the most obvious of the 7 I want to share today. Choose your words and graphics carefully. Okay. Whenever you are designing a slide or preparing a print material, a few things to be considered. A couple of authors I want to mention here. We have Mayer, okay, as the main author behind this model. Ron Mayers. Take these ideas in consideration when preparing multimedia material. Number 1, remove interesting pictures that are not essential. And this, I'm talking to Joaquin in the first place. Sometimes we language teachers feel tempted to use pictures, very interesting, but distracting. Okay? In this cognitive load theory, we call it coherence. We need to be as coherent as possible. Number 2, remove background music when possible. Be careful with music. If you're using it in your classes, make sure that it is totally necessary. Okay? Now, I know what you're going to say. Some of our students prefer to read and study as they listen to music. Well, they may have a mental pattern developed, but if you did laboratory exams, you would see that a person's attention is not as deep and efficient as it would be without the second element, the music. Number 3, highlight keywords or pictures, okay? Like pointing at a specific picture that might be illustrating the situation, or keywords. We call this signaling, okay? Number 4, prefer graphics plus oral narration and avoid on-screen text if possible. This we call redundancy. Sometimes we tend to have exactly what we want to say on the screen. We have it in written as we are saying it. And we call that redundancy. We're not making the best profit of the student's attention. If you're going to put lots of words on a screen, use signaling. That means help the brain focus on specific words. Okay? And that is to reduce cognitive load. All right? This is just to show you a bit of signaling. Okay? As an example, the human brain is an expert in coding, in finding specifically what it needs to focus attention on. Okay, this is an example, an example of the redundancy principle, okay? Graphics and narration versus graphics and text. If we're going to be narrating orally, we would definitely remove those captions from the slide, unless we are teaching a second language and the interlanguage of the students requires that support, requires that scaffolding, as we call it. Okay? All right, I will not do this now because we're short of time. The neuroeducational principle behind this, as I said before, is we need to be very conservative, very careful about stimulation we give the different senses. Okay, we know that younger students, adults, and teens are all what we call natural seekers of novelty. The human brain is a natural seeker of novelty, and a good teacher takes advantage of that, but does not abuse the phenomenon. Number five. Sorry, tip number 5. Teach students thinking routines. Teach students thinking routines. What is all of this about? Well, we learn more from thinking after an experience than from the experience itself. Experienced teachers know that. I'll say that again. We learn more from thinking after an experience than from the experience itself. If you tend to be a teacher that jumps from one activity to the next without thinking in between or guiding your students into thinking, you're probably losing more than 50% of the effort your students and you are making. Okay? Now, thinking is a challenging cognitive activity. It's not easy to do. And many of our students sometimes get to our classes without having learned how to think. We teachers need to teach how to think. Okay? Um, so it becomes simpler if we train students to know how to think. Okay? It becomes simpler. So teaching routines is a way in which we can guide them into the best part of a learning activity. And as David Sousa says, poses it, let students do the hard work. That one who does the hard work is the one who learns. Okay, why not then teach students how to think and let them do the hard work of thinking? Let me show you three examples of how I usually do this in the teacher training courses we do here in Chile. I'll show you a few, three techniques that I want to share with you. The first one I want to show you is the 3-2-1 technique. I usually tell our participants at the beginning of the session, please take a sheet of paper and write these three numbers: 3, 2, 1, from top to bottom. As they follow the presentation, they will have to write down, either at the beginning, during the presentation, or at the end, write down three new ideas they are taking out of the class, two ideas they need to learn more about, and one idea that will make them change after that class. So, in a way, I'm making them think. And this can be what we call a metacognitive type of activity. We are teaching the students. Believe it or not, after you've done this technique several times, students tend to use this and transfer it to other subjects. Idea number two, the three W's. W number one, well, I usually tell students you will be answering these three questions during the class. Either do it as the class goes or do it at the very end. And the three questions are: what did I know before the class? What did I learn today? What should I learn more about? So notice the three questions take what was done during the class, but then I make them focus on the future, on the immediate future. Technique number three, okay, I know this picture is familiar to you, okay, the points of the compass. And then I ask them to draw these points of the compass in the middle of the sheet, and then whatever happens on top of that, the north, will have to do with I need to know more about specifics, okay? Then what goes below that drawing, south, suggestions. Suggestions I'm taking from this class for my future lessons or for implementations, okay, tomorrow or next week. Then whatever happens to the left, to the west, worrisome. Anything that left me a little worried about what I heard, what I was taught today. And then emotion. What kept you, enthusiastic about this class, about whatever happened today or in this lesson in particular? So this is the points of the compass technique, a way to promote thinking in class or after a lesson has finished. Okay. Now, what is the neuroeducational principle behind this teaching routines, thinking routines? Well, let me tell you, the human brain is a talented pattern designer. We are experts in either designing patterns or delivering them from a picture, okay, from a live situation, okay. Have you ever seen yourself repeating models from the people who raised you? Have you seen yourself doing it the same way your own teachers did it? It's because your brain, and you are unaware of that probably, discovered certain patterns, and your brain is making you behave following those patterns. So it's easy. We can teach those patterns to our students to teach them and promote thinking. All right. Next one. Number 6, provide cognitive helpers. This is what we typically call in languages scaffolding, providing steps to go one after the other. Okay, provide cognitive helpers. Learning will be easier if we help students to organize the new information and connect it with what they already know, from simple to complex, from the familiar to the unfamiliar. You know what we call this in neuroeducation? Transfer. Actually, learning only takes place if, after we've memorized something, after we've elaborated on an answer, we are capable of transferring it to new situations. As we provide them with cognitive helpers, we're paving the way for their successful learning. And today I'm leaving you with three examples of how to provide this cognitive helpers. And you may be familiar with them, but probably you were not aware that this is a form in which you alleviate working memory. And the three ideas I'm leaving with you is, how about providing students with a checklist that illustrates what you do with a specific project, with a specific activity, with a learning activity that is taking them more than one session. Okay, this is what we call checklist. I'll show you an example in a minute. Another example, how about a case study? Okay, sometimes a story at the beginning of the class is not enough. Sometimes just showing a picture is not enough. A case study might be more illustrative in a way. Okay, and then example 3, graphic organizers. I know those of you who teach very young learners are very acquainted with this. Now, those who teach preteens, teens, or adults should also start using graphic organizers. This is a simpler way in which we can help the student's brain organize information. Okay, not only at the moment of intaking information, but also of retrieving information. When the student says, I want to look at my copybook and see what I studied last month, and I don't understand my notes. Well, this is a way in which we can help them retrieve information. And first, I'm showing you an example of a checklist. Obviously, it's kind of elaborated. Notice this is a checklist a teacher designed for assigning group work. Assigning group work for a group of students or a number of students, then this teacher designed this checklist, and it will be a reminder, a helper, a guide throughout the entire project. Another example, oh, this is an example of a graphic organizer. Remember, I was just introducing in the tip before, I was introducing um, the concept of different tips, okay, or thinking routines. Now, supplement to thinking routines, okay, by providing students with a graphic organizer where they can solve their exercise, solve their activity of thinking. And this goes for a KWL, okay? What I know, what I want to know, what I learned. Okay, a simple way to put it. Another example of a graphic organizer, I like this very much, working with words. Okay, working with words, where they need to write the definition, where they need to use it in a sentence, write a synonym of the word, okay, and so on, so forth. So this is an easy way to put things in a graphic organizer. And now, to finish with this tip, I've included a timeline when we're teaching students to use graphic organizers. How about, for example, this is for young learners, elementary school, or even with very young learners, preschool. A timeline of where we need to consider past, present, future. Okay, so traditionally speaking, this would be scaffolding properly. We can now call it a cognitive helper. All right. And now we get into our last, we get into, the neuroeducational reason why we need to give students cognitive helpers, because all present learning is based on our past experiences. We don't learn in isolation. Okay, last, number 7, promote collaborative work. And I know several presentations before and after mine will be focusing on this. We know that the human brain is the only social organ. Okay, our stomach is not social, our heart is not social, although our heart is associated to emotions. But the only organ that is stimulated and grows because of being with siblings is the brain. The best stimulation for our brains to connect and make an effort to learn is by having them connect to other brains. Okay? Pair work can easily moderate stress. We were talking about emotions before. A natural regulator of stress, working in pairs. Okay? Group work will help them improve their self concept. So, because of distance learning, do not keep them in isolation. Put them to work in groups because it helps us self regulate. Okay? And number 3, external teamwork might trigger most powerful motivation, which is it? Intrinsic motivation. All right? Now, I know I have only 3 minutes. Um, and so I'd like you to answer, what one strategy would you pick to start using tomorrow? All right? So please use your cell phone to access. Again, I'm going to go to second slide. Can you see the slide there? I think I need to share again for you to answer. Please go to the same code you used before, 557214, on menti.com. What one strategy would you pick to start using tomorrow? Hopefully you choose one. What is number 1 for you? Okay. Okay, try to choose only one so we do not invalidate the activity. Choose only one. And the question is, we showed 7 strategies you can start using to take care of the brain, particularly taking care of the brain in terms of the working memory. Working memory is the capacity we have to take in information within 40 minutes. It's unsteady, okay? It's unstable and it's limited. Why is this important? Because through a strong, clear, legitimate working memory, we will have a long-term memory get stronger. Okay? All right. And so the top one was teach thinking routines. Great, great. Okay. I think I need to stop here. Okay. I want to go back to the slide. Thank you very much for having shared here. And I want to where am I here? There. Okay, hope you can see the slide. Just going back to going to a quote. We have questions now. Okay, we have questions, but before that, as you plan to go back, start teaching with the heart in mind and with the mind in heart. That's kind of a summary to this presentation. And they feel, therefore they learn. Feed their confidence, make them feel curious, and teach what is relevant to them. 3 pieces of advice that I shared with Cambridge, Cambridge, Brazil, Cambridge, Chile. And I think it's time for questions now. So I don't know if Renata is back.
Yes, yeah.
There you are. Oh, yeah.
I was here listening to you and following our chat. A lot of people thanking you for your great presentation. Joaquin, thank you very much. Let's start with the questions.
Sure.
Silvana Soto asks, what strategies could be used to guarantee knowledge stays on our students' long-term memory?
Oh, that would be another talk about long-term memory. Silvina, we mentioned that long-term memory is the one that we can test and measure after 24 hours, not before that. Okay. Um, a number of strategies that we can use has to do with um, doing revisions, doing revisions here and there, and that those revisions should be planned. Unfortunately, I don't have time to elaborate a lot, but those two concepts for Silvina and those who want about long-term memory, which I did not concentrate on today: massive practice versus distributed practice. Our long-term memory gets affected by the type of practice we do with the students. And the two types of practices to make a long-term memory strong enough has to do with a combination of massive versus distributed. What to practice in short periods of time every day, and what to practice in a spaced sequence in longer times, longer periods. Okay, so but I'm leaving of concepts for a couple of concepts for Silvina there.
Okay, thank you very much. Lisa Fiorella Andrada, how can we prevent our own brains from getting so extremely tired? Are there any exercises for us?
Okay, this is important to know. Good question, Lisa. The main fuel of our brains is oxygen, or our oxygen and glucose. Take care of what you eat. Take care of what you drink. The quality of the drinks. The main drink for our brain. We have been designed for drinking water. So bigger intakes of water throughout the day, especially when we need to concentrate. This is funny, Renata. What we tend to do when we are tired, lots of sweets and candy, yeah? But that's not the best for the brain. Lots of water. So the best friend of the teacher is a good glass or bottle of water. One thing. And the other thing is what we eat: fresh fruit, great intake of glucose. And probably number three, I feel tempted to say it, put a limit to your working day. Put a limit to your working day. Okay. Start early morning, okay, if you wish, or start afternoon. That's something I usually do. If I may give my own example, today it's a Thursday. I'm having a live after this event. I'm having a live until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. in Santiago, Chile. And so what I do is I take the morning off because I cannot be working, for 18 hours. And number four and last, I take one full day off every week.
Very nice tips. Our next question comes from Paulina Kilodran. What can we do to take care or safeguard long-term memory?
A safeguard long-term memory. I think I think I've said it by answering the other two questions, Paulina. If I'm using massive versus distributed practice properly, and if I'm taking care of the other health lifestyle conditions, then I'm safeguarding a long-term memory. There's one habit, Renata, which is not healthy at all. People tend to rest with a with this in their hands. We tend to rest. In the past, nobody would call it resting. Looking at our social media and chatting very late at night. We need at least an average. The average brain needs 7-hour sleeping mode. If we're not respecting that, one of the things that gets affected first is long-term memory.
Amazing. Our next question comes from Aparecida Souza Santos, São Paulo. Do you think with all technology nowadays we tend to work more our working memory than our long-term memory?
Definitely, we are attempting against our one thing at a time type of brain. We are not multitaskers naturally. We are forcing ourselves. Okay, so from time to time, Aparecida, what I suggest to do is, um, well, number one, I just said it. Disconnect yourself from the regular routine once a week for an entire 24 hours. I do that every Saturday. People who work with me in Santiago, they know on Saturdays, I'm not doing anything job related. I'm connecting with my family, with nature, my friends. So, Aparecida, start choosing one day and respect it. I mean, disconnect yourself even from the social media. And I have my friends used to that. Like, we know, Joaquin, Friday evening, you know. Um, Otherwise, what happens, Renata, is that when you get back to it on Monday morning, you feel like you are not rested at all. Like,
Mhm.
oh, back to work. So we need to respect natural laws. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Our next question is from Mona Lisa from Alagoas. How can we create an emotional atmosphere to evoke long-term memory?
Okay. I did not elaborate much on long-term memory, but there's something really important. As I showed the triune brain metaphor, you realize that everything goes through the emotional brain. So if the emotions, if our emotions, the emotions we read in the environment, if we read some kind of threat, there are a number of limited options. Either we attack or we escape, okay, and we feel in a condition where we don't want to learn, okay. It happens now with the pandemic. A lot of people in quarantine are so anxious that many teachers, many students are not in a good mood to learn, okay. So we need to control that first. And now, Mona Lisa is asking about long term memory. You know what helps long term memory better, Renata? Um, Nice and kind words. If I'm using right words with the other person, you know what I start affecting? This is studies conducted um, by an author called Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck, a doctor in psychology, discovered in her doctoral studies the moment I start talking to the students, empowering their capacities, I help them change, alter their self concept. When I change my self concept, I can change my self esteem. If I change my self esteem, my learning potential increases.
Amazing. I think it's our last question now. Raisa Rafael from São Paulo. How do quantity and quality of information impact on processing information? Should we teach less content online?
Well, in a way, I suggested it. In a way, I suggested it. I did. I was not very straightforward. I don't want to get to. I don't want to get down to recipes. You know, like, hey, this is how much you should teach. What
Mm-hmm.
what I should tell Raisa is the fact we are studying that now with a group here in Chile, a group of English teachers. How long should a lesson last? And that should never be more than 40 minutes. 40 minutes. And if my school makes me teach for 80 or 90 minutes, break it into 40 minutes each, or even less, 30, 30, 30. And within 30 minutes, I should take into consideration 10, 15 minutes for new information at the beginning. Okay, then a practice mode where the attention goes down, and then what we call a prime time two, when I have to recap what I did at the beginning. Okay, but 30 to 40 minutes is a maximum. More than content is the amount of time I should be, on, in front of a screen. And I want to thank you, Renata, thank Brazil and Cambridge, Chile as well for this opportunity to share with everybody.
No, we are more than glad to have you here. I have a few comments here. Come to Brazil, please, when you are going to do a week-long webinar. It's an outstanding words. So I would say, Joaquin, please give a final word, a final share with us, a final thought before we end your participation at Cambridge Day 2020.
Okay, my final words would be we need to, I mean, the same way neuroscience transformed medical practice about 100 years ago, I think and I hope neuroscience and science per se will change pedagogical practices today. I think this pandemic, this world situation is a tremendous opportunity for teachers to transform what we are doing in the
Thank you
classroom.
very much again, Joaquin, for your participation. And now we are going to the end of our fourth day. Tomorrow is our last day. Oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready for the last day. Are you ready for the last day? Just to remind you, have you checked on Cambridge Brazil's Instagram? It's like a book of stories on education, where not only we share pedagogical and interactive content, but also we connect with teachers from all over Brazil and Latin America. And if you haven't answered our survey yet, the time to do it is now. A link and a QR code will appear on your screen. Tell us everything about your experience, how Cambridge Day experiences teaching and touching you. Tomorrow is our last day of these mind blowing webinars, so I see you there. Thank you very much for your attention and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.